The government has maintained that people must move out of Sierra Leone, Kamwengoi and Kipchoge areas in the Maasai Mau. So according to the state, these are critical water catchment areas of the Maasai Mau forest and must be conserved at all costs. But those who have settled there are adamant that they will not move an inch unless the government compensates them. But how did we get here in the first place? Here is part 2 of our special Inside Mau, as reported by Enock Sikolia.
This one is our Sonyiro River. Coming through here.
Oh, Sonyiro River is here.
Yes, and it has three tributaries. If these people are allowed to continue degrading that ecosystem, the water that is coming from that is going to tremendously reduce, and at some point it will completely dry up. And it has been drying up over time.
But how did it reach here? The Cabinet Secretary's report in 2018 backpedaled the source of Maasai Mau problem to 1999, when 5 group ranches adjacent to the forest block that had been adjudicated in the 1970s applied for consent from the local land control board to subdivide their land among members. Then the boundaries of Sisian, Karoni, Enosokon, Enakishomi and Reio were well defined during adjudication and was hence adopted at first registration. The issuance of the consent literally opened a Pandora's box. Government officers, politicians, private surveyors and influential people irregularly expanded the boundaries of the group ranches beyond the original adjudication areas and fraudulently issued people with title deeds. By 2005, illegal encroachment into the Maasai Mau due to the expansion of group ranches had created 1,962 parcels of land covering 17,101 hectares of the forest. According to the 2005 Maasai Mau status report commissioned by the Ministry of East Africa Development, Enakishomi Group Ranch in then the Ololunga adjudication section, original parcels of land were 115 and registered hectares of 1,748.5, but was expanded by 9,748.5 hectares in the excess of 8,000, making 452 illegal plots in the forest.
That subdivision should have been to the right members who are in those group ranches. But when you look at the list has extended from what it was to a very big number.
At this point in time, the County Council of Narok, which had been entrusted with the management of Maasai Mau forest land, raised no objection. Former councillors from the defunct County Council agree that a lot of conmanship was facilitated by their colleagues and then senior politicians from Narok County.
Ile mashamba iligawanywa na njia mzuri elewagwa Giridgard. Hii ingine ni title peke yake.
Former councillors do not rule out the involvement of some of their former colleagues. Most councillors sold their pieces of land and made quick money.
People like those people who worked in those in the Ministry of Lands back then, former PSs, those are people who belong to jail.
Indeed, these individuals colluded with senior state officers and pocketed billions of shillings from buyers in exchange for sale agreements and title deeds that have been declared illegal and invalid by the government.
Kama mwenye alikuwa na shamba kitambo ameuziwa mwingine akausia mwingine. Sasa saa hii serikali akisema uambie mwenye alikuuzia akurudishie pesa yako, utaambia nani?
Kwa majina mimi naitwa Pastor Daniel Kipchoge. Nilitoka Bomet. Nikanunua shamba hapa 2000. Niliuziwa. Sikunyakua, sikufanya ulaghai, sikufanya scrapping. Nilinunua shamba na nikafanya search, nikapatiwa hiyo barua ya search na niko naye kwa nyumba. Sasa sisi hatukununua forest, tulinunua shamba kutoka Trustland ya Narok South constituency.
When he bought land in Sierra Leone, Kipchoge says no one told him that this was forest land. No border was mentioned to him. For the government, this beacon strategically erected on what was meant to be forest land is the borderline.
Shamba yangu ni legal. Kwa hiyo niko na document ya serikali yenye iko na watermark ya serikali. Na hiyo tena signature ya DC siku hiyo. Land registrar.
If you bought land, from which part of Group Ranch did you? From the 3,000 hectares or you got it from the 19,000 hectares? So that is the first step we have to take. If you bought it from the 3,000 hectares, there's no reason as to why you should be awarded, because those were the original demarcated group ranches. If you bought it from the expanded to the 19,000, that's where the problem is.
That scheme of coning was aided by government. Government did not move in. Government sanctified that coning scheme by issuing titles.
How residents define these areas is totally different from what is documented. According to reports by various task forces, the contested areas were classified as Maasai Mau Trustland Forest, tasked to the defunct Narok County Council for management.
Wanasema ati hapa ni forest. Kwani sisi ni wachinga kutoka Bomet, kutoka Kericho, kutoka huko Trans Nzoia kuingia forest hapa. Hizi ni mashamba.
We are a country of records. At any given time, it is not just exchange. Give me money, I give you my title. It is a process. If we really care, we can actually be able to authenticate that, know whether you're telling the truth or not. And I think it's about time.
The impending eviction of settlers in Sierra Leone, Kipchoge and Kamwengoi areas is not the first one. In 2005, houses were torched and people injured as the government forced people out of areas classified as critical to water catchment. A multi-sectoral report had termed these areas as a fragile ecosystem that needed protection. Approximately 12,000 people were pushed out of Maasai Mau, including Zephania Kones, the former soldier.
Ilikuwa ni eka 4 na zote zilichomwa. Posho mill iko vitu yote ya electronic ala tukua tumeweka hapa tunaiuza. Zote zilichomwa hapa hiyo 205.
The referendum politics were around the corner, and with Raila Odinga and his Chungwa team having mounted a heated campaign against the Kibaki's Wako draft constitution, evictees were allowed back into these areas. Then, script flipped after the 2007 election.
Ni Kibaki aliturudisha hapa na akatuambia kila mtu arudi kwa shamba lake na mchunge chemichemi ya maji. Na tukarudi.
I mean, by the time a population that was initially, titles were 700, until a situation where more than 10,000 people, then where was the government all this time?
The negligence on the part of government has contributed largely to the destruction, because people who have genuine titles gave birth to people who don't have documents to continue, giving themselves land, but the same government did not move in to stop them.
People here claim that the only border they know of is the cut line made of a T-zone. It was meant to separate forest land from settlement areas. It was put in place in 2014.
Ajua wakati Uhuru aliweka jai huko, watu wakakuja kununua. So saa hii kila mtu alimaliza kwa bali alitoka akakuja kununua hapa.
You put a cut line as a buffer zone between human settlement and the forest. But the cut line that was put there ilikuwa ni ukora, kwa sababu huwezi kuweka cut line katikati ya msitu. So the cut line was put in between two forests. If the cut line, which was supposed to extend for 24 kilometers, starting from Amalo River here all the way up to I think almost Sasmwani, would have lost the larger Maasai Mau forest. 100%, I would say that. And that one would have been a serious crisis. It was ill-advised. Whoever gave with the idea had maybe a different agenda, an agenda that was not good for this country.
The government has ruled out compensation and is going for eviction without compensation. According to the government, compensation will mean validating an illegality. But those affected, as well as their political leaders, disagree with this government approach.
Find alternative land. Resettle those people in that alternative land, or simply compensate them and let them leave the Mau Trust land.
Enock Sikolia, Citizen TV in Narok County.